Hi guys, Scott Bryce here. The date is June 2nd of 2020. I'm starting a new feeding experiment in my worm bin. I was trying to decide what experiment to do next, and the answer sort of fell into my lap. Yesterday as I was cleaning out the refrigerator, I came across some moldy cheese. This is some cheese that my wife and I had bought for a road trip we took a few months ago. We never got around to eating the last of it, and it just sort of fell out of the refrigerator as I was cleaning things up yesterday. So I'm going to do cheese in the worm bin and see how the worms respond to it. I'm actually expecting a very positive response based on what I've done in a couple other experiments, and I'll make reference to those in just a second here. The cheese has gone very, very moldy. There's a lot of mold in this stuff. It is primarily Colby Jack. There is some provolone in here, some cheddar, and some pepper jack. So there was a little bit of habanero pepper and jalapeno pepper mixed in with this as well. I've been doing something to try to maximize the possibility of success in the experiments. I am mixing the food I'm experimenting with dampened bedding and chopping the food into small particles here, so you can see the cheese has been mixed with damp bedding. So I don't have just one big block of cheese to see if the worms will go after this. I'm going to bury this in the bedding so that so the worms will have show some interest in this rather than just have it sitting on top. This is my bin. I'll back up a little bit here. It's a fairly large bin. There's a container I mixed the food in. I have a piece of cloth I cover the bedding with to keep things from drying out in the heat here. You can see I've recently fed with grass clippings and cardboard. This was yesterday. The worms are already in the grass clippings. I'm really surprised how fast they've gone after this stuff. I expected it would take a few days. You can see there's some food scraps in here as well. Now, the previous experiments, I actually still have them in here. Let's see if I can dig these out. If you haven't been following my experiments, I should just make note. This was yogurt in the worm bin, and you can see it's got worms in it. This has been largely processed. This never did get around to stinking. The worms are still crawling around in here, having a fun time eating up yogurt in a worm bin. The cardboard in here is largely processed, and worms are still eating this. So yogurt was a success. Let's set that aside. The other experiment I did was whole milk. Again, you can see there's still worms in this. This is very highly processed. The worms really, really loved eating milk. Normally, you don't put dairy in a worm bin. If I dig in here, I don't see a lot of worms in it now, but you can see that a lot of what's in here, there's a few worms. But you can see that, there's some more worms up here. You can see that this is largely processed. I'm seeing springtails in here. So they eat dairy just fine. Neither of these experiments ever stunk. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dig a little hole here in the middle of all this. Let's see. As I'm digging here, you can see the bedding down below. This is largely leaves, and there's a lot of worms in here. There's coffee grounds in here. I put this in here to help the worms overwinter in a bin this large outdoors. I didn't want the bin freezing, so this is put in here mainly to insulate them. So now I'm putting in the cheese experiment. I'm going to bury it here in the bedding. And well, the worms are just loving this bin. And I'll come back in a few days and see how the worms are responding to cheese. Will it be similar to my yogurt experiment and my whole milk experiment? Or will it be more like some recent meat experiments I've done, which were loaded with maggots before the worms ever really showed any interest? And we'll see. So standard practice is you don't put dairy in a worm bin. I've had great success with dairy in a worm bin. And now it's time to see how the worms respond to cheese. Thank you for watching.